Welcome to our very first ever podcast, Rebuild and Fulfill. This is the podcast for people standing at a threshold, ready to rebuild what's cracking and fulfill who they were meant to be. Thank you so much for being here. We are super excited to be doing this podcast for you all. And it's a very important time because mental health is at a crisis level in our country right now. And so I want to bring in Marc, my co-host and co-founder of Suffer to Tougher, to ask you, Marc, what does this actually look like in everyday life, this mental health crisis that we're going through?
It seems like a tidal wave that's building up, and it looks like there's no end in sight. I mean, there's just a lot of things in our society right now that's leading us to this. I mean, obviously the financial stress, just everyday life, some of the things that we do as a society. It's just amazing what's going on out there right now. It's actually kind of sad. I know that you have had a lot of conversations in regards to some people that you talk to, and when you're in the community and people are coming up to you. Same thing with me. I mean, it's what I do during the day. So, I mean, I see the stuff all day, every day, and it just seems like it's getting worse and worse week by week, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We do talk to people so much now that we are, doing presentations. We're out in the community as, mental health advocates is kind of what I like to call us. So, because we're not therapists, we're advocates for mental health. We support people who are going through mental health crisis and in every way that we possibly can. But with us, the beauty lies in the lived life experiences that we've had and how we've seen some of the things that's helped us in our lives, helping other people. So we like to make that clear to people that we are not therapists, not that we have anything against therapists, but simply, we come from a lived life experience into this space. So big reason I think that people are experiencing so many problems and really either don't realize it or don't know that what to do about it is what we kind of call the messy middle. So we've been taught that you're either fine or you're in crisis. You can have a mental health day, okay? But you have to worry about the stigma behind that. And the idea of, well, if I'm having a mental health issue, does that mean like I need therapy? Are people going to say or think I'm crazy because I have a mental health issue? And so that's where we kind of try and help people to realize and make people more aware of what mental health actually is. So it's not a you're fine or you're in crisis. Most people are somewhere in the middle. So, Marc, why don't you kind of explain what you think about this idea?
Yeah, I mean, and you know this, Kelsey. We wear our Suffer to Tougher hoodies or our T-shirts, depending on the time of the year. Or like if I'm working out at the gym, I wear a lot of like recovery T-shirts that support the military and things like that. And we wear it basically on our sleeve. And what's interesting is there is that stigma out there. We've come a long way as a society. There's no doubt about it. But we have such a long way to go. And it's something that I don't know if it's a shame or guilt, but people have a hard time talking about it. But when we wear our hoodies or our T-shirts or wear a recovery T-shirt to the gym or to the grocery store, people will ask. People will stop. What's the Suffer to Tougher about? Are you a military vet? No, I'm not a military vet. I support the military. I'm in recovery myself and so forth. And it just stimulates a conversation. And in the weirdest places, it happened at Costco a couple of weeks ago. It happened at a work function. Last weekend, it happens at the gym all the time. I mean, guys that I see and women that I see working out on a regular basis will comment on my T-shirt, especially because I go to different gyms depending on the area that I'm in. So it's not necessarily people that know me, and it just strikes up a conversation. It's on people's mind, but they don't know how to talk to people. But then when you're open, honest, and transparent, or you kind of wear it on your sleeve or wear it on your T-shirt, people just feel comfortable talking about it because it really is just everyday stuff. I mean, it's the stresses of life. It's the pains of life. I mean, a lot of people out there, especially like I alluded to earlier with the financial stress, they're just feeling burnt out right now. They feel like they got, a number of balls in the air and they're just trying to make sure that those balls don't hit the floor, and they're dealing with some anxiety, some anxious feelings, maybe sleepless nights or what have you. As a result of that, sometimes you get emotionally numb. You have sometimes you have some resentments, like, I'm 52 years old. I should be farther in life than this, or maybe some resentments towards certain individuals and so forth. They might have thrown a couple of curveballs at you, some past relationships and things like that. And then, the average person, including myself, tend to drift a little bit. And we drift usually by picking up some bad habits, whether it's, overeating or, eating some sugar, desserts and things like that, picking up a habit like online shopping, gambling, whatever it might be, because, really that's a form of self medication. They're trying to soothe this burning that's going on the inside because they got this I'm fine mask on right now, like everything is okay, when they know deep down inside there's something off. And then I think that's the biggest issue. They just don't know who to talk to, who to approach, or where to get some guidance from. And I think that's the whole purpose of this podcast.
Yeah, it's funny when Mark talks about the how people come up to him and talk to him. We're certainly going to get into lots of stories through this process of delivering our podcast, but I get these stories from Mark on a daily basis. When he's out in the world and people just come up to him and talk to him, it's might as well be like his shirt says, "It's okay, you can talk to me," because they absolutely do.
Hey,
And I hear the stories all the time, and it's awesome because people just have to know that you're like a safe place to land, a safe space for them to be able to talk to because they want to. They really want to. They just don't feel like they feel like they're going to be profiled because they have this weakness as a lot of people like to think of it. I mean, they don't like to think of it, but they do think of it that way. And so but when we're out in the world and when we do our talks and stuff, we see what wasn't that people didn't care. It's that they knew something needed to change, but then they stalled there. They really didn't know what to do next. So when we saw this pattern that was developing, it kind of started with that awareness, just being aware that something is wrong with them, because obviously nobody wants to kind of see the fractures, as we talk about it sometimes, because then it's like, oh well, now I have something I might have to do something about. So sometimes we're hiding it from ourselves. We certainly hide it from other people. We don't want people around us to know that we've got these little fractures that we're having that we try and write it off as a bad day or a bad week, or, oh, I just need to get through this kind of phase, something like that. And then you go from that awareness to, okay, like I think I really need to do something here. Okay. And you go from that knowing I need to do something, but again, you're kind of stuck in the mud because you don't know what to do. Then you finally make up your mind that you want to take action. And then you're like, okay, like, all right, this is something I'm going to do. And so then you actually do something to take action, and maybe you set the bar too high. I've been a fitness coach for over 30 years, and I see New Year's resolutions come and go, and people try to do everything when they're doing a New Year's resolution. My exercise, my diet, my water, my everything has got to be completely on point because this is the year I'm gonna do something different and make a better person out of myself. And it's too much. It's like one day at a time. And we also like to say progress over perfection. Just pick one thing to start with, and for some people, it's just, getting up in the morning and convincing yourself that today's going to be a good day, and everything else, let it fall in place however it's going to. It could just be a simple mindset trick. All right. So, but take some action, but then make that action something that's consistent enough that you can sustain it. And when you do that and you've got that sustained strength, okay, and that's the way we look at it, is that you're strong just to wake up in the morning. It's a tough world out there. It's really tough. And there's so much going on, and we're responsible for more things than ever. There's more pressure than ever. And so the idea that just to wake up and say, I'm going to put my best foot forward, you're strong. You're strong. You have things that you could get stronger at, that you could move through life better without so many hiccups if you were a little bit more mindful about your approach. And so as you go through what we call the strength continuum, you go from being strong enough just to survive the day, to strong enough to be able to stand and say, whatever life throws at me, I can handle it. So, Mark, can you give us like an example of maybe somebody who goes through, their everyday life and maybe experiences something like this?
yeah, I mean, give hundreds of examples, Kelsey, because of all the speaking I do and so forth. And if I could just elaborate a little bit, in regards to the awareness part, I think people think that they're a little off, or they have a little something going on the inside. But I think that as a society, we tend to look at the differences as opposed to the similarities, and I think that's important that the audience needs to understand, and I was no different. I know we're gonna hear my story next week about, the path that I went down and so forth, but that's exactly what I used to do. Okay, well, yeah, I know I'm doing this, but, I still got a job, I'm still married, I, still have kids and so forth. I looked at the differences, but if I look at the similarities of what was going on the inside that led to maybe some destructive behavior or some chaos in other people's lives, I could have been so much more aware. And I think that's where these conversations need to come into play. These open, honest, and transparent conversations where people can do some soul searching and figure out, do I need to make a decision to make some change? And the thing about it is, if you do make a decision, change is scary. I mean, change is scary in everyday life. I mean, you go through a change at work in regard to some type of administrative change, everybody feels anxious, right? Or you change computer systems, everybody feels anxious, right? Well, when you know you got to make changes in your everyday life, whether it's dietary, whether it's getting your body moving, or whether it's brain set resets, maybe getting some support on the outside, okay, that is really daunting and scary. And I like what you said there about, just focus on one thing. Maybe go for a walk around the block. If we're talking about a dietary change, just focus on one thing. Maybe cut pop out of your diet or something like that, and then build on the momentum. The progress over perfection is really important. As a society, we want everything and we want everything now, but that's not realistic. So let's figure out moving forward one area that you can change and then you build on that. That's certainly what I did, since I made major changes in my life almost, 5.5, almost 6 years ago now. And, for the people that I've worked with in the community, that's the same approach that I've taken and it's worked very, very well. But the biggest thing is like when I speak at the hospitals, or I volunteered at the crisis department or run support groups for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I was in sales for 30 years, so I'd like to think I'm a pretty good listener. I hear stories, and there's so many similarities in the stories, whether it's somebody in their 20s, somebody in their 50s, doesn't make a difference if it's male or female, doesn't make a difference in regards to ethnicity. Could be somebody in Downers Grove at Good Samaritan Hospital, could be Glendale Heights, Glen Oaks, could be at somebody just walking into NAMI at the DuPage County Health Department. I'm not a genius, but you start connecting these dots, okay? Everybody has similarities. And sometimes because we don't have that awareness, the similarities can lead to some destructive habits, and some chaos in your life because we don't know how to control the anxiety or the depressed thoughts or the panic or maybe process some past trauma or whatever it might be. And I think that's important to understand, and that's really the reason why we're doing this, obviously.
Yeah. So speaking of, since this is our first episode, I'm sure the listeners want to know if they haven't figured out already. So what is this podcast? What is it about? Who is it for? Why do I want to listen? What will I get out of it? So if you can kind of expand on that a little bit for us, Mark.
Well, you made a comment earlier that it's not therapy, and it's certainly not therapy. Really what it's about open, honest, and transparent conversations. I think that's the biggest thing. And the key there is open, honest, and transparency. No secrets, I believe that secrets are like cancers inside of your body growing, and that can lead to some mental health issues. It's about being able to speak your feelings. And I know as a society, again, we've come a long way, but we tend to still think, okay, that expressing our emotions is a sign of weakness, right? We got to quote unquote man up. No,
Right.
expressing your feelings, okay, is a sign of strength. And that's really what we want to drive home here when we have these conversations. We want to obviously talk about maybe some cultural reframing, which is kind of what I just alluded to, practical insight, a lot of stories. I mean, what got me here today was hope and inspiration by a gentleman that spoke when I was in the hospital. Okay, sometimes we just need some hope and some inspiration to drive us to make that change. We are aware, but we need that hope and inspiration. So we're looking to have a lot of stories, a lot of guests down here sharing their stories about how they were able to transform their life and live the life that they're living right now. And then obviously want to talk about what it actually takes to fulfill your potential sustainability. And It's interesting, and you and I have had a lot of conversations offline about these thresholds, these strength thresholds. Yeah, I was a strong person. Okay, I was a strong person, but I hit a maximum capacity. I hit a threshold. Okay, I mean there was not more for me to do based off of my knowledge and based off what I was doing on a daily basis. And if you would have talked to me 6 7 years ago versus now, I would have thought it'd be impossible for me to be where I'm at today. But through structure, through support, through these conversations, through education, you learn, you apply, you drive through your threshold, and you become stronger than you've ever become before. But the key is continue to work on that and continue to build, because I'm a big believer that you need to be proactive versus reactive, and that complacency can be dangerous. You got to always want to strive to be better on a daily basis. And that's really what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, I mean, so some weeks it'll be conversational like this. And one thing that's kind of cool about that is even people that read our book, Suffer to Tougher, tell us, man, it was like listening to a conversation. Or it was like having a conversation with the writer. And people really dig that. And that's actually the way that we meant for it to be, not so informational as so much as conversational. And so we want to do a lot of that, certainly on this podcast. We do, as Marc was saying, we do want to bring guests on. I mean, either guests who've gone through transformations themselves, guests that are struggling, that are like, hey, I don't know where to go. And we're like, hey, why don't you jump on and have a conversation with us, and we'll see what we can do to help you out. We might actually have therapists on here. Like Marc and I said, we're not therapists, but we're also not anti-therapy. So we might bring some therapists on to talk and maybe give some of their insight. So lots of different things that we have planned for the future. Obviously, we're going to give you, lots of tools to be able to use in your daily life struggles and that sort of thing. Anything else I'm missing there, Marc?
No, I mean, I think we pretty much hit on it. I think that next week, you guys, you all, the audience, are going to hear a little bit about my story. So I don't want to get too much into it today. It's an interesting story, that's for sure.
Yep.
We'll leave it at that. A pretty destructive story. Lost a lot, but at the same time gained a lot. And that's what we're going to be discussing next week.
Excellent. All right. Well, we didn't want to make this first podcast too long, too daunting for people to get through, just to kind of learn a little bit more about what we're going to be bringing here. So we really do want to thank you for listening to our first episode. We hope you've gotten a few nuggets to take with you today. And if you're listening and thinking, I'm not in crisis, but I'm not thriving either, this is the space for you. You might not be broken. You might just be standing at a threshold. So anything to add there, Marc?
No, I mean, you pretty much hit it right on the nose, man. I mean, that's the biggest thing is, you might not even realize you're standing at a threshold, but by watching these podcasts and hearing these stories and hearing some of the content that we're going to bring, you're going to realize it. Again, that's where the awareness component comes in. So I hope everybody continues to listen.
Awesome. And like we said, next week, we're definitely going to be taking the deep dive into Marc's story. And I can tell you, as a listener of many of his stories, that it's not one that you want to miss. Some fascinating stuff. And he's very engaging when he talks out in public. And I call him like the master of the leaners. Like, he starts talking, people lean in. All right. It's just, his stories are very captivating. So definitely tune in next week. And thank you very much for listening. And I think that's going to be all for now. Take care, everyone.